Hello, this is Adam Watson.
And I am Ben Kreger.
And you are listening to the Comic Collaborative. As this is our first episode, we'd like to take a minute to tell you what this show is going to be about. We will be discussing the creation of comics and all aspects of that.
Diving into the collaborative process. Comics, like many great mediums, have more than one creators, and we're going to dive behind the scenes and explain some of the stuff.
We will be talking about everything that affects comic creators today. We will occasionally be interviewing other creators, as well as retailers and fans, both new and old.
So to talk a little bit about our background and experience, Adam and I have both been publishing comics for quite a while. Myself, I've been doing this since 2009 officially, when Warrior Innkeeper Comics was born. We now go by the name of Warrior Innkeeper Creative, to stay confusing.
Why are you trying to confuse
Why am I trying to confuse people?
Yeah.
Mostly it started off, people were getting confused with me being a publisher or a comic book store, and I got tired of people assuming I was a comic book store. But more so, I branched off into graphic design and comic lettering, and I felt I needed a name that more expressed the services my company provides. So that's why we moved to Warrior Innkeeper Creative. So far, I think I said we've published around 20 individual comic books. We've done web comics, and I've done a few commercial campaigns. One for a local cable company in Independence, Oregon, called MyNet. I created their mascot, MyNet Man, and I've done logos and whatnot. So that's kind of my experience. I'm mostly a writer, but also a publisher and a comic letterer, and then I do graphic design to try and help cover the cost of comic books. Now, Adam, on the other hand, has been doing this for quite a bit longer, and he was my first mentor. So, Adam, how did you begin all this?
I published my first work, Ghost Assassin, back in February of 2006. To date, I have published over 20 titles, most of which I've written, through Darkslinger Comics. I have also edited other people's works, including one of the Little Lincoln books put out by Ben Kreger.
Number 3.
And a few of the Corpse Cops books that were put out by Alan Bennett of Black Box Comics. I do at least 10 conventions on average every year, and have done over 200 since I started doing them in 1997 when I was 17. I do conventions as both a publisher and as a retailer, and oftentimes as both at the same table.
That's really fun.
It can be fun. It can also be a little bit of a pain in the ass, because you want your titles to sell better, and it can get frustrating when you're like, can you please buy Chronicles of Von Helsing, for instance? And people just keep buying 50-cent issues, but at the end of the day, you're still happy because you made money.
Yeah.
So you got to just figure out a way to slip a little promo in with the comics that they're buying. My titles include Ghost Assassin, Chronicles of Von Helsing, The Principalities, and my webcomic, El Bovine Muerte. Upcoming titles include Diary of a Dead Man.
I'm really looking forward to that one, by the way.
And an original graphic novel titled Reflection.
So, Adam, you and I are writers, so that's where everything begins for us, is we get an idea and we write a script. For this episode, we're going to pretend you all know how to write a comic script. We'll touch on that in another show. But, Adam, you were my mentor in this whole thing, so let's talk about how you first found an artist. When you had finally written a comic script and had decided you're going to do this on your own, how did you approach the task of finding an artist to draw your book?
I found the first artist I ever worked with through a website called digitalwebbing.com. That is a comics creator forum that has a great area for hiring collaborators for both paid and non-paid work. One of the most common questions I get asked at Comic Cons is how to find collaborators. Today, there are more ways than ever, because of the internet, to find someone to collaborate with. You can find someone through websites like digitalwebbing.com, or deviantart.com has a classified ad section.
Is Pencil Jack still up and running?
I don't know. We'd have to look into that. You can find somebody by posting ads on Facebook. If you have a Facebook fan page, they now allow you to post job postings on your fan pages, which can be pretty handy. You can make up a little image that you can put on Instagram saying that you were looking for artists. And there is still the old-fashioned way of going to Comic Cons, going around Artist Alley, finding someone whose style you like, and asking them if they want to work with you.
Or begging them.
Or begging them.
Or waving cash under their noses.
That could work,
that helps. Yeah, so, like, Adam did this old school. He went on forums. I'm terrified of forums, actually.
Why?
They're too busy for me. For some reason, it takes too much concentration to look at a forum and follow the conversation. I don't know why. I have the same problem with like work applications and IRS forms. It's like it takes so much energy just to focus on those little fucking boxes.
That explains a lot about your life.
I know, right? First, I started off pilfering artists from Adam. And but then I went to Facebook.
By pilfering, he means that I was getting submissions from artists because eventually I put submission guidelines on my website at darkslinger.com. Yeah. And a few of the people who were submitting to me I thought would work well with Ben. So I gave him their pages to look over, asked them if it was okay to share their contact information with him. And then he contacted them from there. So it wasn't quite pilfering like you're some Viking.
But now I'm a stalker, so I don't know if that's any better.
No, it's not.
Basically, I've grown my Facebook friend group to include as many comic creators as possible. I've used Facebook Messenger unless the artist prefers to get emails, and I'll find that out beforehand. But I do a lot of contacting through Facebook and Facebook Messenger, talking to these great artists and somehow convincing them to work on my books. A big part of that is asking them their page rate as opposed to telling them how much you want to pay them. I made a big, terrible mistake when I first made my comic book. Little Link and I had approached this cover artist, suggested a price for the cover, and it turns out that was a huge insult. And I've tried to make amends ever since then. But I mostly approach it, I'll talk to the artist. Again, to reiterate about prices, so it's best to approach an artist, say that you have this project, you're looking for an artist, and you want to know what their page rate is. And after that, there can be friendly negotiations, and maybe you can work out some sort of deal. Often, in my introductory email, I'll say, I am an independent publisher. I am a small press, so my budget is, not huge. I'd really like to work with you. I'm a big fan of your work because I pretty much only work with people that I'm a fan of, which is, I don't know, maybe stalkerish crazy, but whatever. I really appreciate good artwork, and I want good artwork to tell my stories. The point being is sometimes you can negotiate a price that both you and the artist can afford. I've been really lucky in being able to work with fantastic artists like Dexter Wee and famous artists like Fred Hembeck and Brett Weldeley. Mostly it's just talking to them, being respectful, and the biggest thing is understanding that this is work, this is their livelihood, and that exposure is, it's bullshit. There's no such thing.
Yes, there is.
Well, that's a different issue. But the point is, when you're collaborating with somebody, you want to make sure that it's fair for everybody on the team. The writer, the penciler, inker, colorist, letterer, etc., etc. There are deals where you can do a 50-50 percent partnership.
Which would be collaboration.
Which is, that's real collaboration. Mostly what I'm talking about is work for hire, but we'll get into all that. Adam, what has your experience been?
My experiences has been relatively the same.
Well, that makes sense. You taught me, so.
Yes, I did. The one difference for me is that a lot of my artists these days come to me through either the submissions on my website or from meeting them at comic conventions. So one thing I want to go back to is when you were talking about finding out how to communicate with somebody.
Right.
If you are an artist, a writer, letterer, inker, colorist, and you're submitting to a small press or bigger company, pay particular attention to how they want to be contacted. One of the things that will turn me off in regards to working with somebody is if they continuously contact me through a means that I don't accept submissions through. So what I mean by that is on the website, if you go to it, it details exactly how I want a creator to submit to me. What I expect to see in terms of the samples, what I expect in terms of the method that's used to contact me. If I get a message through Twitter that states, hey, I want to work with Darkslinger Comics, I'll take the time to reply and let that person know where our submission guidelines can be found, because I'm guessing they probably don't know, and that's why they reached out through Twitter. But if they then send me their submission through Twitter, or even worse, decide to post it on Facebook and tag me in it, that's going to tell me they're probably not a professional person to deal with. And no matter how good the work looks, I'm most likely going to pass it up at that point.
Yeah. A big point here is stop fucking tagging people. No one likes it. If the person has nothing to do with it, please don't tag them. It's probably the most obnoxious thing in social media. And small press publishers like Adam and I get really turned off by it and really annoyed. I have been known to block people for it.
As have I.
Because it's so obnoxious to have your personal timeline filled up with all these tags that you have nothing to do with. And yeah, you can go and remove tags, but after doing that a few times, and the person's not listening to you, it's just block button, baby.
Block button. Okay, so I want to go back to the whole thing that you stated about exposure.
Right.
What you stated, I think, is bullshit.
Okay, go for it.
I only work with people that I'm going to pay money to. Mm-hmm. But I also expect the people that I work with to be of a certain quality.
Right.
When you're just starting out, it is ridiculous to think that everyone is going to just automatically start out at a level that is high enough to make someone say, hey, I want to pay you to do this artwork. Right. You have to work up to that. And, you can't just go and decide one day, I'm going to be a journalist. Pick up a computer with, Word on it or whatever. Start writing a story about Benghazi and expect Time Life to publish it.
There's a lot of people that think that way.
They might think that way, but, it's not going to happen. You have to actually pay your dues in some way, shape, or form. And one of the best ways to do this in comics is to collaborate with a friend, get a little bit of experience under your belt, deal a little bit with, printing up something on the smaller end, going to some cons, getting some feedback from people who actually know what they're looking at. Take your book that you've done with your friend, go up to some industry pros. If they have the time to look over it and give you some feedback, take it and listen to what they have to say. Their time is pretty valuable if they're willing to give it to you. Pay attention to what they're saying. Don't be argumentative. And also don't pester anyone to look at your work. I've had people come up to me at conventions asking me if I can read their movie scripts. I've explained to them that's not what I do, and I won't be doing that, especially at a con. And one gentleman in particular spent a half hour trying to convince me to read his movie script while I was at a convention. He was also oddly proud of the fact that it took him 2 hours to write. But that's a story
Wait. A dude came up to you.
Yes.
That wrote a script in 2 hours.
A movie
script.
Yes.
In 2 hours.
Once again, I'm a comic creator. I'm not a movie maker.
And he thought it was so fucking amazing that this comic creator was going to read it and somehow produce it into a movie.
I honestly don't know what he wanted from me. I don't know if he wanted me to give him feedback on it. Uh-huh. It didn't seem that way. It seemed like he thought it was the greatest thing that was ever written. He spent quite a bit of time telling me how...
Well, maybe it is. Maybe you passed up a great opportunity.
Maybe. He spent quite a bit of time telling me how awful every single movie was that year. And he went into detail on each and every movie. And I kept, trying to help, talk to the other customers that were there. Because I did have customers in this time frame.
Yeah.
And, I want to be able to sell my books. That's why I'm at the convention. And he told me about 5-6 times during the course of this conversation, it took me 2 hours to write this. I wrote this in 2 hours.
I think the guy that wrote Hands of Manus spent more time on his script.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, the B movie Manus? Hands of Fate or whatever it's called?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, I'm going to have to show you.
Okay.
It's considered the worst film ever made.
But there seems to be a large uptick in the amount of people who have been coming down on exposure recently in the industry. As someone who pays the people I work with,
right.
I have to say that attitude is bullshit to a degree. Mm-hmm. Because sure, there are plenty of people out there who do not need exposure. Mm-hmm. And who, don't hit those people up expecting them to work for free for you. Don't hit up anyone expecting them to work for free for you. But there's nothing wrong with finding someone who wants to break in, who's willing to work on this with you, that, like you stated earlier, you can both own 50% of the IP.
Right.
You can get some exposure, but more than exposure, what you're needing is skill. You may have talent, but do you have skill?
Right.
You have to build your skill. Most jobs that are highly skilled require you to go to college. You could go to the Joe Kubert School and learn from professional comic creators. There would certainly be nothing wrong with that, and you'd have a leg up on a lot of other people if you did that. Mm-hmm. But the majority of artists who are starting out, they just kind of want to jump into it. There's nothing wrong with that either, but you have to get the skill that will allow you to be paid.
Right.
So when everybody goes on and on about, exposure is bullshit, exposure is bullshit, exposure is bullshit. What about skill? Is skill bullshit? Because skill is only something you get from working at something. Comics is a collaborative medium. So unless you're planning on being the next Jeff Smith and doing it all on your own, which, hey, if you can, fantastic. Hats off to you. The majority of comic creators out there work with a team. And you have to build the skill of working with that team.
And that's a really excellent point and a different side to the exposure controversy of the comic art world. Yeah, I've never thought of it in those terms. In the terms that I'm speaking of, and I'm not being defensive here. So I've had people approach me telling me they have this great comic book idea, and they'll draw it, and I'll write it, and it will just be great exposure, and they're overly excited about the exposure amount. And because of my experience, I know that unknown names cannot get you the type of exposure that has been expressed in pitches like this. They talk about, we'll get our comic in Image, and we'll publish under Boom or Alterna, and it'll just be this big, huge thing. And, I will allow for that possibility to exist in some parallel dimension. It has not been my experience in my, I think, almost 10 years in the industry.
That is incredibly poor salesmanship.
Yeah.
You don't sell yourself as something you're not.
Exactly.
Don't lie about the amount of copies your last little self-published comic sold.
Yeah.
Don't lie about the amount of cons you're at, anything like that. And don't make it seem like you have a connection you don't. Unless you have had work published by Image before, or Oni, or Dark Horse, and they've stated, we have an open door policy to you, which I don't know that they really do for, anybody that's not a giant creator.
Yeah. Someone that's going to
don't ever sell it like that's something that's going to happen. Just be honest about what your project is, and you probably won't piss everybody off.
Right. That's actually basically the life lesson, is be honest in everything you do. When you're collaborating, and this is really important because comics require a team. unlike, maybe a novel or some other art form. Honesty is the best policy.
I would still say a novel requires a team.
Well, yeah, an editor.
It requires an editor. It requires somebody to lay it out. It requires somebody to do the cover.
Art requires a team, which is great, because that's what this podcast is about. Is about collaboration. But it's really important to stay honest in all your relationships, even your business relationships. I think that's, you always hear these stories about these 2 or 3 people that worked really well together on a project, but egos or dishonesty got in the way, and you'll never see that like again. And I find that really unfortunate. So in all my dealings, and they haven't always been great, I've always done my best to be straightforward and honest about what we're producing. And I think that is really important.
So Ben, where can people go to learn more about you and Warrior Innkeeper Creative?
Facebook. I am a Facebook whore, or whatever you want to call me. I'm a stay-at-home father. I work at home, so I am often...
So they can find you at home?
You can find me at home almost all the time, but don't. All right. You can find me on Facebook. Type in Warrior Innkeeper into the search, and you'll come up with our publisher page, Warrior Innkeeper Creative's page. You should be able to find me under Warrior Innkeeper search on Facebook. We also have fan pages for the Less Than Historical Adventures of Little Lincoln, Magnanimous Invention of Ben and Mike.
You should never title a book something that you can't pronounce.
I know, it's so obnoxious, isn't it? I'm terrible. And The Black Suit of Death is our most popular comic right now. It's actually going to be the flagship for Warrior Innkeeper Creative. You can go to blacksuitofdeath.com or warriorinnkeeper.com to discover more of our stuff. So we're also on Twitter and Instagram, but I'm never on Instagram.
Have you ever posted anything on Instagram?
A couple pictures. I mostly use it to stalk my daughter.
Sounds needlessly creepy.
I have a 12-year-old daughter. She just...
It's not getting any better.
just got an Instagram without telling us. And so we first, the wife and I decided to set up an Instagram account to see what she was doing on it before we approached her, because we didn't want her to keep it any more secret. The greatest adventure in life is having a daughter. I'll tell you that much. It's very interesting. We just, our oldest just turned 18, and now we got this 12-year-old, and totally different experiences with both of them. It's fascinating. Anyways, Adam!
Do you want to talk about your website at all, or not?
My website?
Yes.
WarriorInnkeeper.com.
I mean, you do have a website.
I do have a website. It's been under construction for about 6 months.
I'd say more like 6 years.
Shush.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not wrong. We have a design. We're just working on implementing it. My web designer and business partner, Ed Ellsworth, he lives in Arizona. I live in Oregon. So all our communication is, online or on the phone. He has a full-time job. Keeps him pretty busy. It's, web design. So he puts in as much time on this as he can, and does his best to translate my designs into HTML or whatever the web language is today. I'm a geek. I'm not a nerd.
You can just say into code.
Into code. I don't know if you're done making fun of me. Yeah. I'll have to die before that ends. How do you find out about Darkslinger Comics? Where the hell are you on the web?
You can find out about Darkslinger Comics by going to www.darkslinger.com. Unlike you, I actually do have content on my webpage.
He has a lot of content on his webpage.
And I'm adding more all the time because I'm trying to revise the website. I do not know all that much about the coding either. But, I would rather have content up than nothing at all. So
I have tons of content on Facebook.
That's true. On the Darkslinger website, you can actually look up at the top, and you'll see a bunch of buttons that will lead you to the various social media platforms that Darkslinger's on, which include Twitter. On Facebook, I have a fan page for Darkslinger Comics for titles Ghost Assassin, Chronicles Von Helsing, and El Bovine Muerte. On Instagram, Darkslinger Comics has a Tumblr. We have a YouTube channel. And we even still have a MySpace, though it has no content on there that you can't find on any of the others, because we just keep it up with a plug-in that makes it so that every time I post something on Facebook, I think it is, that it auto-populates onto MySpace as well. But, there might be somebody on MySpace still who wants to, find out about us that way.
Maybe. When MySpace rebooted, they deleted my page.
Oh, that wasn't very nice.
Yeah, it's not even there anymore. But that's where all this started, was on MySpace. Well, for me.
Well, yeah, because we're old.
Because we're really old.
Yeah, so we like MySpace better than the Facebooks.
I miss MySpace. You could do so much more. It was your page.
Yeah, you could actually change your background and not just have it be that stagnant gray and blue all the time.
Oh, yeah. Facebook's so boring.
It is.
But 1 billion people are on it? Over 1 billion people, so... That's why we're on it. And I learned Twitter because... And
it's old person friendly.
It is old person friendly, that's true.
That's why we're on it.
Twitter was a different beast. I actually prefer...
Twitter, I have not actually learned properly yet.
I like Twitter. We have a lot more traction on Twitter than on Facebook.
So, have you been able to use Twitter whatsoever to find collaborators?
I haven't attempted it, but I have used Twitter to contact other small press publishers and pick their brains. And that's helped me develop my own business and learn a lot about the other side of comics, the publishing side of comics. And I've done that through Twitter. So like Facebook is the collaborative building the book. Mm-hmm. And I use Twitter for obviously marketing. But also personally I use it to explore publishing. I can't tell you why one works for me and one for whatever project I'm doing. But that's my experience. And Twitter has been a great instrument for promoting our crowdfunding campaigns, like on Kickstarter and stuff like that. Word gets spread a lot quicker on Twitter. You can be abusive on Twitter, and what I mean by that is not bullying people. You can do that too. I advise against it. What I mean is, like on Twitter, you can do more posts per hour than you can on Facebook. Like if you do 2 or 3 posts on Facebook in 1 hour, people get annoyed with you.
Correct.
You do that on Twitter, and they expect you to keep doing it.
Oh,
the next hour.
Yes.
And
because Twitter is more of a constant contact.
Yeah, and your feed moves so much faster than on Facebook.
One of the social networks that we didn't discuss whatsoever for finding collaborators is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I have a fairly active LinkedIn profile. I've been pretty active in their group conversations over the years.
I think we need to have a conversation. You need to teach me how to use LinkedIn.
You teach me how to use Twitter, and I'll teach you how to use LinkedIn. I have over 500 connections on there, and one of the things I've noticed about LinkedIn is I don't get direct submissions through LinkedIn, which makes it quite different than Facebook or Twitter, because I will frequently get somebody messaging me directly through there who wants to send me a submission through Facebook or Twitter, who's done no research whatsoever into what Darkslinger Comics even is. On LinkedIn, that doesn't seem to be the case. The people who come from there actually take the time to get to know what the company is about and read the submission guidelines on the site. Mm-hmm. And I've had people submit to me who have told me they have, came from LinkedIn, or on my website analytics, I've seen that it's been clicked on through LinkedIn. But it seems to be a completely different crowd. I really recommend making a LinkedIn profile, keeping it updated, if for no other reason than the professional aspect of it, because it is, right, the most well-respected, as far as I know anyway, well-respected social networking site for business specifically. Mm-hmm. Have you used it whatsoever to your advantage with finding collaborators?
No. I've had people approach me on there about comic books, but it didn't go anywhere. Again, like LinkedIn's format, one of the things that kept me off Facebook for a long time was the construction of the page. Like I said, for whatever reason, I have some sort of, for the lack of a better word, a dyslexia when it comes to worksheets or something with a bunch of boxes on them and stuff like that. And so for a long time, I stayed away from Facebook because of that. For some reason, the way Facebook did it versus the way MySpace did it was really different, was alien to me. I'm having the same issues with LinkedIn. It's like, I played with it enough to, grasp the idea of how to use it, but it's not attractive to me. So long answer for an easy question that I could have just said no for.
No, that's okay. The explanation is why we're having a podcast.
Yeah.
So, yes. Very good things.
Yeah.